another great opportunity to learn a variety of information and or have a lot of learning take place. So just as a quick reminder to the audience, we try and do these about once a week. We hit or miss a little bit every so often, but overall have a number of ones in the queue and ones that are up and coming. And so as we do or set out to provide those, if you want to see the ones that are up and coming in the following weeks, you're always welcome to go to my LinkedIn page. Just click on the events tab and you can see which ones are coming. If there's one that's of interest, you can click to register and then you'll get those notifications and reminders. So with that as the kind of quick caveat and quick introduction, then, as a reminder to the audience, if you didn't catch it, so we have a great topic in mind. I think it is one that is important, sometimes overlooked, but is also always worthwhile to learn a bit more and to have kind of in your tool chest as an owner, which is, having the proper mindset first. And so a lot of times as you build or grow a business, sometimes you'll focus on, the end goal, which is to build wealth or build freedom and be able to accomplish those end goals. But much earlier than that and prior to it, it is setting that mindset of having the proper outlook on it, how to have the mindset to accomplish those goals, and how to have that from the beginning. So we have a great guest on that will be sharing some information on this topic. I'm sure to help everybody and aid them in their journey. And so with that, I'm gonna to throw it over to our guest Axel, and he'll maybe introduce himself a little bit, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, thank you, Devin. So would you want me to share the screen?
Yep, you can click just screen share on the bottom, however you'd like to present.
All right, here we go. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right, very cool. So like you said, give a little bit of an introduction. I'm originally from Germany and I came over to the US through the military. So you see this little plane here on the left, that's the one that I was flying in Germany, and then came over to the US and got the opportunity to fly the green one here on the right side. That's called an F-111. And did that. And I had originally thought that I would be going back to Germany, but through some circumstances, that didn't happen. I left the military, retired basically when my body didn't want to fly these kind of anymore. And then from there, started my own business and realized, okay, well, one thing that you kind of need to consider when you run your own business, and I know, Devin, you know this too, is, what do you do? Do you want to work forever, or do you build something that generates some sort of passive income, or you do a 401k or some sort of that? And so what I ended up doing is doing research, looking into what do I really want to be involved in, and I decided it to be real estate. So I'm showing a few pictures here of properties that we own in our portfolio. But from a conceptual point of view, I also wanted to kind of find a way, if we're doing this not just for ourselves, but helping other people to do the same and build a passive income portfolio, how can we structure that? And so I was always fascinated. I don't know actually if it's really true that Brandon Bouchard was the guy who came up with this little munchkin here, but I like the concept of the BHAG, or big, hairy, audacious goal. Mine at the time, and still in a sense today, is to build a passive income portfolio that generates enough passive income, money on a monthly basis, so that I have the freedom to decide what do I want to do with my time. So, when Devin asked me, hey, come on to the fireside, I want to be able to say, yeah, cool, I want to do this, and not because I'm dependent on anybody, right? Now, the other part is, and this goes to this aspect of kind of where do we start with the mindset. I had studied a couple of different models, and one that I really liked for coaching and mentoring is called the GROW model. That's quite prevalent in industry. And I integrated it to a certain extent, and I will tell you why I felt it needed to be expanded. So when you look here, and this relates obviously to the big, hairy, audacious goal, but you're not jumping from zero to the end. You have sub goals on the way. So we're starting out with what is your big goal and what are your sub goals. And then in each one of our mentoring sessions, we talk about what is your current reality? How is life actually happening to you and work and investing and everything? Then we look at what are the obstacles and opportunities that you have in front of you. Obstacles to overcome and opportunities to actually take advantage of. And from that, within a discussion, within a conversation comes what actions will we actually take to get closer to one or more of these different goals. And as you can see, GROW is basically where the GROW model ended. And I felt that's great when you only get together once. But in my program, for example, you're together for a year and you're talking to each other every 2 weeks. Well, the conversation shouldn't end there. So when we meet again 2 weeks later, my first question would always be, and I'm sure this is pretty normal, is to say, hey, how was it? What was your experience from the stuff that you wanted to do that we talked about last time? And so you would share the experiences, and then the next logical question would be to say, okay, from the stuff you did and the experiences you had, did that generate any results? What were the results of the actions that you took in the last 2 weeks? Sometimes it might be something small, sometimes it may be something bigger, but whatever the results are, the next question is, how does that influence your goals? The big one, not so often, or the other smaller ones that lead to the big one. And as you can see, that then becomes a cycle that we are actually going through regularly. It becomes a way of communicating with each other. Now you also see here the word ideal in our name, Ideal Wealth Grower, and this is kind of what waters our little tree here. We want to have income. We want to have appreciation in our properties. We like to have equity in the properties. We always take depreciation or tax benefits. And we also want to use leverage, because if we only have to put 20% of the money or 25% and the bank does the other 75 or 80%, that's pretty cool, and it helps us to grow this little tree better. So how does that actually look like? And I'm not going to bore you with this because this audience is pretty familiar with real estate, but these are the kinds of properties that we are currently working on. I have become, wasn't always that, I admit, but I have become a big fan of build-to-rent properties. So these are brand new build properties. This one is 2025. It's rented for $1,900, cost $270. You can read all the stuff. But the big point is that we now believe in building basically long-term portfolios. If anybody is interested in more details, I'm happy to share. Now, when we go and say, what does all of that have to do with mindset? The other aspect of the structure that I really like, and I know Devin is, from a legal perspective, an expert to set these kind of things up or help setting them up, is what is our position as the investor owner? And I'm a big fan of saying we should start with making investing something professional, and that means we're turning it into a business. So you see here in the middle, I put you, the investor and owner of the LLC, or the founder, CEO, president, king or queen of the empire, whatever you want to call yourself, but you are there in the middle. And what I really want to point out is here in the yellow circle, it is from a mindset perspective really important that you start realizing you are in charge. I'm making this a big point because a lot of people that come to me and want to build this passive income portfolio, they come and their whole experience was what I call dependence. They were dependent on their parents initially for the first, I don't know, 17, 18, 19 years. Then they graduated from the dependence and from school and went to university or to college. And for the next 3, 4, 5 years, they were dependent on the organization, the university, to learn, and sometimes still on the parents to provide a place to live and maybe some food. And then they get a job, and then they're dependent on the employer. So we're becoming conditioned, and our mindset is there's always somebody who is telling us what to do. In this employer-employee relationship, we realize if there's a business and we're working for that business, this business gets successful because we are trading our time for money that the owner or the employer of that business is basically paying us to apply our skill. And I want you to take that, and that's what I do in our program, besides helping to build the portfolio with the real estate and all that stuff. But take the mindset here in the middle. You are basically the employer. And who are you employing? Are you really hiring people like you would in a company? Not quite, but the mindset and the relationship has a lot of similarities. You're hiring property management. You're hiring insurance or an insurance broker. Like in my case, for all my properties, I have an insurance company, and all our clients have the option to work with the same guy. You're hiring either a DSCR lender or a bank or some sort of mortgage organization to do the 80 or 75% leverage. In our case, you're hiring a turnkey provider that renovates or builds the property, is basically putting it on the market and providing property management under one roof. So the turnkey provider and property management can, in some cases, be the same employee, so to speak. You have inspectors that these are the guys, these are like contract hires. You hire them every time you consider to buy a new property. They do the inspections, they give you the report, and then they're done. So it's more like project hiring. And then you have legal and estate planning. We, for example, suggest for our clients to do something called Legal Shield or Legal Zoom, which is kind of like a membership. And if you ever have any legal struggles, you have real lawyers that are working on your behalf. So this is the core minimum team that you see here around the center that I recommend that you should have for running a successful investing business. Are there any others? Yeah, absolutely. You can have more. The important thing to where Devin actually started us out is it's a totally different ball game when you are here in the middle and you are the boss, you are in charge, you're running that business and you're employing all these people. What does this mean as a practical example? Think back for a moment what the typical situation is when you were maybe at the point where you wanted to buy a house, a residence for you and your family, or you wanted to invest in a new property and when you try to get funding. In the vast majority of cases, because we are so conditioned to being in this dependency, it almost feels like you're going to a bank or to a mortgage lender and you're kind of begging them to give you the money. And in return, they say, I need this document and this document and this explanation and this letter. Imagine how different that is when you say, hey, banks out there, hey, lenders out there, I want to give the best of you an opportunity to fund this project. Make me your best offer. And then I see who I'm actually going to bring on to be employed to provide that mortgage. And I pay you interest and principal. And I guarantee you that the asset for which you bring the money is insured. So that's a totally different mindset, a totally different approach, a totally different situation from which to operate. And this is true in every single case here, right? You know, there are thousands of insurance providers. You know that in every place, even if you originally buy a property from a turnkey provider or from a flipper, that you could always get professional property management, even if it's not the one that you started out with, let alone inspectors or lawyers or so forth. There is a dime a dozen. The point is, the mindset point is, you in the position of power, because you are in charge, you're running a business, you have the opportunity for all these entities to work with you or not work with you. And guess what? That mindset also means that when you hired somebody, let's say you hired property management, and you keep getting complaints or you don't getting the information that you need to really make good judgment calls on, do you want to get another property? Do you invest? Do you want to renovate anything? So forth, because they're not communicating. Guess what? Just like in any other situation, the employer checks the performance of the people that you are paying. And if the performance isn't there, you let them go and get somebody better. So you can see you can use what you have been conditioned for and go on to the other side. Be the person in charge that runs this as a professional business, and everybody else gets an opportunity to collaborate in a nice collaborative environment where everybody is working towards the goal of having a financially independent passive income portfolio. But if somebody doesn't perform, then sorry, we can go to the thousands of others that are there that offer the same. Now, on this slide, you see, and I don't know if this is of any interest, but I put a few things here that can also help you in your role as the investor, because as you all know, there's more and more software tools and AI-based tools and so forth. So these are just a few that we are using when we are actually going out there and saying, okay, let's see how any particular property that somebody is offering to us, mainly turnkey providers, shaping up and looking in comparison to the others. Is the rent realistic? What's the valuation? What's the financing we can get, and on and on and on. So this is just a small tool set that we use. So if anybody wants to know a little more, as I showed you this system, but I wrote also a book, like a full. You can have it as a Kindle book, or you can have it as a hardcover book that describes this whole thing on about 300 pages. The other thing, if you like to stay in touch, you see up here ideawealthgrower.substack.com. That's where our newsletter is. And then the last one here is basically where you can go to our website. And on the top right-hand corner in the website, there's a button called Discovery Call. And you can basically click on that and get on my schedule. And I'm always very welcome to speak with everybody, because I really believe we need to kind of see if we are on the same frequency, if we like each other, if we vibe with each other, if we can come to common ground, because this is maybe not for everybody. I feel when you learn to be a really confident, self-confident business owner and investor, you just have the best opportunity for the best possible results. So that's what I prepared, David.
No, that's definitely an awesome walkthrough and a lot of great information and thoughts on it. Now, maybe just to open it up a little bit to the one-on-one fireside chat. I mean, there's a number of things. I guess the first thing always comes is, and hit on a little bit at the kind of when we kick things off was always on the timing issue in the sense that, you know, it's kind of like the old adage, when's the best time to plant a tree? And 20, 30 years ago, whatever you want to
You're
say.
right.
And
Yeah.
this the second best time is to plant it now, right? So I guess the question's always a bit on timing. You talked a little bit about mindset, kind of building some of the assets within and that. But if you are limited in your bandwidth, ability to invest, or other things you're already engaging on, how do you kind of go about giving or considering that or otherwise incorporating that?
Well, I think there is a shift happening right now. I used to say to the same question that you just asked, the main aspect to look for is performance, right? Like, where can I find the asset that provides the best performance? Meaning the ratio between how much I pay and how much rent I can collect from that, if it is my goal to build a passive income portfolio. But we are also, I believe we have to recognize that AI is going to have more and more influence on the economy, which then might actually mean that people will have the freedom to go to locations that they actually desire. Right. So it's not just timing, but it's also where for the long run, because if you build a passive income portfolio, you need to think in the long run. So where would most likely be locations where people would want to be if they don't have to go to work on a daily basis, or like, show up in a particular location? And as soon as you start asking that question, then you have to say again, where is the ratio? Because if you say, oh, everybody wants to be in Miami, yeah, but there are no desirable properties that cash flow. Or everybody wants to be in San Diego or San Francisco, or I don't know, some kind of beach location. So you have to keep that in mind, I think, more than we needed to in the past. We cannot just exclusively look at performance. We also have to look a little bit on desirability for the future of AI.
No, that makes sense. And kind of, maybe building on top of that. So where do you see kind of, you mentioned the AI tools, integration, kind of utilizing that and that shifting a lot of things. Where do you think, I know it's always a bit of a crystal ball and I get that same thing on a lot of the legal as well, but where do you kind of see, how do you see things maybe changing or adjusting or adjusting or otherwise, or doing, or, I guess changing and adjusting or in the near term future?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a little bit about it, because there's so much discussion about, these kind of ChatGPT and Claude and large language models and so forth. And I have come to the conclusion we currently at a state that is kind of similar to when, and I don't know how much people remember this, but there was a time when Microsoft Office came out. I don't even know if people right now can still remember there was a time before something like Microsoft Office existed. Before you had Word and PowerPoint and Excel and all the, and it's not Microsoft. You could also do Google Sheets and Google whatever, or the same stuff for Apple. But there was a time before that existed. And then these new tools came out. And we could already, by applying and using these tools and becoming better with them, we could see productivity gains. But like if you imagine that there were literally rooms full of people who were manually typing into typewriters, just, hundreds, if not thousands of those jobs went away, secretaries as they were called, or computers, right? There was literally a job that was called computer that wasn't like what we believe a computer is, but that was a person who did math, right? So I think we're at this point where kind of MS Office in AI form has come out, and we're calling it large language models. What I think is really going to happen and really going to make the change is what's called embodied AI. We mentioned just, for the people that you would hire, I mentioned property management. I'm sure you have property management for your portfolio. I have it for my portfolio. What would I prefer if I had the choice would be that somebody sells me a humanoid robot that knows every trade in perfection, plumbing and painting and electric and carpentry and all that stuff, can do it 24/7, 365, maybe with a little bit of time for charging, does not complain and never gets tired, and costs me less or maybe the same, but with much higher precision and availability than property management costs me now. Just imagine what kind of massive productivity gain that would produce, right? And so if you go through, I think we are in the really early stages. And what I was talking about to this point of considering where people would want to live, if these embodied AIs can do so many jobs, knowing everything that you need to know about a job, then the question becomes, what do people do? And they still need to live somewhere, they still need to be protected, they still need food. Those three things are still true, but where do they want to be if they don't have to be in a certain location? And I think embodied AI, to your question, crystal ball and where is it going? I think in the next few years, we will see robots for general usage that, currently is pretty much all done by humans.
No, I think that definitely makes sense and some great insight. Well, we are already, it feels like we just barely scratched the surface, and we're already reaching towards the end of the fireside, and always try and keep these a little bit more bite-sized or digestible for the audience. But always like to wrap things up with the same question. So we're going to jump to that now, which is, what is one of your favorite books or podcasts?
Well, I have a bunch, but since we've talked a little bit about AI, I like a book called Stella from John Sofor, no, from Tony Sieber. So the book title is Stellar, I think, AR, and Tony Sieber is the author.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely have to put that on the queue of books and make sure to or give it a listen. Or I always say read the book, but it's more realistically it's going to be one where I listen to the audio version of it. So hopefully that's available, and definitely we'll have to add that to the list.
Yeah,
So
that's available. He actually, in a nutshell, just to maybe increase the curiosity a little bit, is the book is about the transition from the age of extraction to the age of abundance.
awesome. Well, it sounds like a good one that I'll have to take a listen. So. Well,
Yeah,
now's
right.
we do wrap up towards the end of the fireside. If people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above. What's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Yeah, just like I said in the deck there, go to ideawealthgrower.com and on the top right-hand corner, discovery button, click on it, get on my schedule, and we talk.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, support a great business, expand their network, and if nothing else, make a new best friend. So, with that,
Yeah.
thank you again, Axel, for coming on Inventive Fireside. Thank you for the audience for attending, and hopefully, you gained a little bit more insight and a little bit more knowledge on your journey to building a successful business. And so, with that, this is a quick reminder to the audience, as I mentioned the kickoff. If you do want to check out any of the upcoming Inventive Firesides, always feel free to go to my LinkedIn page and just click on the events tab, and it's an easy way to or to see what's coming and register for anything that will hopefully be beneficial to you. So, thanks again to everybody, and wish everybody ongoing success with their business.